Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for listening. Welcome back to So You Got a Scholarship, the podcast that centers marginalized voices in academia inside and outside the classroom. As promised, in September, I'm offering weekly episodes, and this week I am on to part two of the three-part series Journey to Grad School, where I'll be talking about the application process. So let's just dive right in, shall we? So, you're sure you want to apply to grad school, but what is the most efficient way to go about searching for your desired grad program, for keeping track of your applications, how to find funding, etc.? This is what I will attempt to cover in this episode. And just a reminder, if you haven't checked out part one, please do. In case it makes more sense to do it that way. And also, I'll be using grad school to mean both master's and PhD level type of studies, and I'll specify where things kind of refer to one more than the other. I may not be able to get into everything in this episode, but I do hope that I will offer some guidance and hopefully, just kind of make sense to y'all. I will begin by covering how to look for programs to apply to, the pre application contact, and then we'll finish with putting our materials together and what to use and like how to go about, keeping track. At each stage, I'll give tips on how to make each stage easier and more useful to you and like quick and easy. And then I will also have a free gift somewhere in there too, or you can also obviously check the show notes before I even get to what the free gift is. But let's go. Okay, so the first thing we're going to be talking about looking for programs. So when it comes to how to look for programs, I'd like to offer three approaches that you can use. And at any point, I'd like to say that you can use just one of these approaches or a combination of all three. It just kind of helps you know a starting point. So the first one is what I'm calling the supervisor or academic-based approach. And this is also, I guess, the career-oriented approach. Here is where you know a specific supervisor or academic who is a rock star in your field, whom you want to work with. And so you focus on the institutions, the departments that they're in. These may be your rock stars because of the subject or the methods that they use, or their career trajectory is something that you want to mirror in some way, in part or in whole. So this basically may look like applying to be part of a specific lab that an academic is a part of, or applying to a specific department because of whom you want your supervisor to be. Obviously, I guess to get to know these things, it just depends on how involved you have been in what is going on in your field, in the literature of your field. If specific names keep coming up, or if specific places and spaces keep coming up, then you look into those. So this is the first approach, and this is kind of how you go about looking for schools, programs. The second one is the funding oriented approach. This is when you know of funding opportunities that you qualify for, so you apply to the countries or institutions that are eligible for like that scholarship or funding program. So here I'm thinking of things such as the Chevening scholarship, right? It's specifically for specific, that's repetitive, but I've said it, UK institutions. So you know that if you're targeting Chevening and you want to be a Chevening scholar, you're not going to be applying to the US, right? Gates Cambridge scholarship is for Cambridge. So you know that you're not going to be looking at, I guess, Oxford, and things like that. So what this looks like is that you're applying to a specific institution because there is funding that you're targeting basically for that institution. And this is okay to do, right? And this goes for mostly, I think, for masters, but also definitely for PhD programs. And then the third one is the program-oriented approach. Now, for some disciplines, your program name has one name across, institutions. So, you want to do a PhD in history, you're going to find a history department. That's where it sits, right? You want to do archaeology, or you want to do biochem, it's going to be in biochem. That's what it is. So you're basically looking for places where there is that program, and then you're comparing other factors across the same program, right? So you just kind of want to know what's the difference in the different history departments? What's the difference in the different biochem departments, etc.? But this is not the same for all cases. Sometimes your research could sit within different departments in different institutions. And this was the case for me. My research would fit into differently named departments across different institutions. So the schools I applied to, you know, in some cases it was in media and communications, in some cases it was in international politics and I forgot what the department was called, and then in another case it was in the Center for Gender and something else studies. In other cases it actually fit into sociology, and so it really just depends. So in that regard, what you want to do is go the way of knowing what your research is or what you're interested in and finding out where it sits in the different institutions. Now, with the program oriented approach, you kind of have to then use the other approaches, right? You know what you're trying to research. Now you go look for academics or you go look for where the funding is. So with this approach, you kind of have to pair it with something else that you're looking for, something else that you're interested in. So you can see why at one point you can use more than one of these, especially if you're casting a wide net. And then here comes the first tip for managing the application process. You must have a management system. This can be in the form of an Excel sheet, a Notion template, a Word document, a handwritten table, anything that helps you visualize, update, and manage the different aspects of your application. In my case, I used an Excel sheet that I called a grad school tracker, I think, and then I updated it into a Notion template. And so this is where I have the gift for y'all. If anyone who's listening to this, I have the Notion template ready for sharing. So if you do have Notion and you're a Notion user, or even if you don't use Notion, I think you can still look at the template and then kind of find ways of transferring that into whatever software you use, Excel, Word, anything. So what I do when I track things, when I track applications, is that I have like tables, right? And a table with like the institution name, program name, potential supervisor, sources of funding, and the requirements. It just kind of helps me keep track of, whether or not I've contacted anybody, keep track of what is required, keep track of like whom I'm talking to, just to see, what is similar, what is different across these places. Which then also actually leads me into the second stage of the application process, which is the pre-application contact. So before you apply, you want to find out more information about the program and the institution as much as possible. You want to assess whether it is what you're after and also whether you're a good fit for it to begin with. There are obviously two ways of getting this information. The first is current students or recent graduates. This is for both master's and PhD level. Now, one thing I do want to say is that you want to recognize that current students are not paid for this, and recent graduates too, I suppose. And so you want to be courteous and respectful of their time when you ask. But I will say that most current students and recent graduates of a program are willing to talk to applicants. You don't want to be the person who emails somebody or gets in touch and says, hey, can I talk to you? They schedule a meeting and then you don't show up. No shots fired here. You want to be the person that actually shows up to the meeting kind of prepared with a list of questions, what you're looking to know. And also just, when you ask for 30 minutes, do try to keep it to 30 minutes. If you have to go over, just kind of to let them know early on, just be courteous about it. But, most people, I would say like about 90% success rate, honestly, even higher, are willing to talk to you. So usually you also get insight into the non-academic aspects of the program, the institution, and if you're applying to a different city or country, you also get insight into that as well. And so I think this is a very good resource at any level that you're applying for. And then obviously the second pre-application contact is faculty. This is much more easier at PhD level because faculty, means that you're reaching out to somebody who's a potential supervisor. And this is a great way to get into the things that are not on the website. You also get insight into their supervision style, you get insight into their research. Also, you just kind of get to know if the person is somebody you can work with, right? Because I think sometimes we idolize people when we read their work, and then when we actually get to encounter them, we might realize that we're pretty different, or that we not necessarily don't have the same approach or the same goals, which, depending, sometimes it's not always the best. Sometimes it's definitely like the best to have that difference. But a couple of things here for contacting academics is that most, if not all, actually, may not have much time. So when you email them, get straight to the point, give a summary of your research and exactly like what you're looking to research for, so that they see if it is in the same field, if it is even a fit, right? And then you also want to read up on their work and their research area, so that you're sure that you're in the same research area. You want to put in the email what exactly about their research area led you to contacting them, why you would like to work with them. That way they kind of already, I guess it also just helps people feel good. We all kind of like feeling good. But also it's just a practical thing to do, because then that way they can actually recall, oh, okay, this is that stage of my research, or this is that level of my research. Yes, I'm kind of going in the same direction now. I can take on a new student, or I'm actually moving away from that right now, so maybe I can't take on this student. It's just useful for them. And then the last part of the application process is getting your materials together. Now that you've contacted some people, you know which programs you want to apply to. You want to add required documents to your graduate application tracker, and the Notion template I have made for y'all has all of that there. For ease, you want to include as much detail as possible, right? Such as word count, right? Is the research proposal required 2,500 words? Is the 3,000 words? What are the reference requirements? Do they want 2 academics? Or do they want 1 academic, 1 professional, 2 academics, 1 professional, etc. Here, when it comes to getting your documents together, I have like 4 tips, I think, that would be useful. You want to make sure that you're creating documents that are adaptable to the different institutions and departments you're applying. By adaptable, I don't mean that you're using the same document for every institution and just changing the name. People can usually see through that. But adaptable means it's going to take a shorter period of time for you to rework that document for that institution, rather than writing an entirely new document, right? And so having your application tracker with all the documents and the requirements, they kind of just helps you visualize the best way to build, like, I guess, the foundational document from which you'll get all of these other extra things. The second thing is that you really want to think thoroughly about your references. Some programs are okay with 1 academic reference and 1 professional. Others want 3. Others want 2 that are strictly academic. What this means, I think, is that you need to really think clearly about your career. You really need to think clearly about your past. Well, not like your past, like, in that way, but you know what I mean, like, your past academic trajectory up until this point. Who were the supervisors you worked with, or who were the academics you worked with, the professors you worked with, that you had really good relationships with, but that could also speak to you as an academic, not just you as a student, right? That can speak to more than just the good grades you got. I think that's one thing that you really need to think about. And whoever you're getting your references from, you want to make sure you have told them ahead of time. You want to send them links to the program, to the department, so that they know exactly what they need to be highlighting. There's a lot of little things that are hidden in academic language that sometimes we may not even know before we get into the space. And then the second tip is that you want people to read through your documents, your personal statements, your research proposals. You want at least more than one you want at least more than one person, if you can, and if possible. Someone in higher education too would be great. If it's not, it's okay. Do get someone to look over for inconsistencies, flow, style, And this also includes your CV. It's just important to get somebody else to look at your document, because usually when we're writing something and when we've worked so hard and we're just steeped in this one document, we get so focused on it we miss the little things, because we know what we meant to say, and so we think we've said it, and yet when somebody's reading it they don't know what we meant to say, and so they can easily tell that something is missing, or they can actually see that something can be misunderstood. And so it's useful to get people that can edit for you. And then the fourth tip is that you do want to make sure and remind yourself that your documents are living, breathing documents. This is kind of in relation to the first tip about making them adaptable, right? But you do want to make sure that as you're writing, you are keeping things, that are important, things that you might have to edit out for a certain program. Keep them in a separate document. Don't just delete things and like completely delete them and not have them anywhere, because you might be able to take those for another program, and it's just to make the process shorter for you. So that is all I have for this week, folks. Another really quick and short episode. Thank you so much for listening and for just, I guess, being here with me. I know that it is difficult to cover everything when you're trying to do episodes like these that are solo, and also just trying to go over some tips and things like that. But do feel free to reach out and ask questions on social media. We're TEDx Media on both Twitter and Instagram. Or you can email us sygspodcast@gmail.com, sygspodcast@gmail.com. This was absolutely great. If you want to support the show in any other way, go on over to our Patreon, www.patreon.com/sygspod. That's SYGSPOD. Or you can buy merch. We do have a couple of funny tees, mugs, and all the good stuff. The link is in the show notes. If you do not want to support the show monetarily, it's totally fine. Just subscribe. It's now called follow, actually, on Apple Podcasts. So follow us on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a review, rating, share with your friends. Just let more people know about it. And yeah, find us wherever you listen to podcasts. As always, thank you very much. Stay well, be kind, and be you.